On March 9, 2025, a man walked into my shop on a rainy Tuesday morning carrying a folder thick enough to hold a mortgage application. He was not there for a repair. He was there because he wanted to trade in his 2021 Camry XLE for a Lexus ES 350, and his wife had finally said no. He had driven both cars back-to-back at two different dealerships the weekend before, and he could not stop talking about the difference. The Lexus felt like a vault, he said. The Camry felt like a Camry. He just wanted to know if there was anything we could do to make his car feel even a little more like the one he was not allowed to buy. I leaned on the counter, asked him to give me 1 hour and $42, and told him I would change how his car drove for the rest of the time he owned it. He laughed. He thought I was joking. He came back 90 minutes later, sat in the driver's seat, closed the door, and did not say a word for almost a full minute. Then he looked at me and asked quietly what I had actually done. Today, I am revealing the exact $42 trick that most Toyota owners will never hear about, why dealerships refuse to quote it on any service ticket, and why the Camry and the Lexus ES are not nearly as different under the skin as the price tags want you to believe. Here is the part Toyota does not advertise on television. The current Camry and the current Lexus ES are built on the same TNGA-K architecture, same wheelbase in many configurations, same basic suspension geometry, same family of engines. They are assembled in the same country, sometimes by the same hands, and they share more parts than most owners will ever realize. So when you sit inside a $95,000 Lexus ES Sport loaded with every option, and you feel that silent, planted, almost European stillness, you are not feeling a fundamentally different car. You are feeling a fundamentally different finishing process. And the single biggest difference in that finishing process is something so cheap, so simple, and so unsexy that no dealership in America is willing to put it on a repair order. It is not the engine, it is not the transmission, it is not even the suspension tuning, which is closer than people think. It is the sound deadening. Lexus packs the doors, floor, firewall, trunk, and wheel arches of the ES with layer after layer of acoustic damping material. Butyl rubber sheets bonded to the metal. Closed cell foam tucked into cavities. Felt mats under the carpet thick enough to muffle a hammer strike. The Camry gets a respectable amount of this material because Toyota is not stupid, but it is a fraction of what the Lexus receives. That single difference, more than any other factor, is what separates the way the two cars feel at 60 miles per hour. It is what makes the Lexus door close with that low, expensive thunk, while the Camry door closes with a higher, hollower clang. It is what makes the rain on the roof of an ES sound like a distant whisper, while the same rain on a Camry sounds like a snare drum. And here is the part that makes mechanics like me roll our eyes. The raw material that Lexus uses to do this is not exotic. It is not patented. It is not protected by some secret supplier agreement. You can buy a functionally identical version of it on the internet for around $42. The brand most of us use in the shop is Noiko, though Kilmat and Silas work just as well. 80 mil thickness, butyl rubber base, aluminum foil top layer. One pack covers roughly 36 square feet, which is more than enough to treat all four-door skins on a Camry with a healthy amount left over for the trunk lid. That is the trick. That is the entire $42 secret. Sound deadening matting installed inside the doors transforms the way a Camry sounds and, more importantly, the way it feels. Because here is something most drivers never connect in their own minds. The brain does not separate sound from ride quality. When a cabin gets quieter, the suspension feels softer. The steering feels more precise. The car feels heavier, more planted, more deliberate. Engineers have known this for decades. Lexus exploits it ruthlessly. Toyota holds back on purpose so the Lexus has something to sell. When that customer asked me what I had actually done to his Camry, I told him the truth. I had pulled the door cards off all 4 doors, cleaned the inner door skins with rubbing alcohol, cut sheets of Noico to size, peeled the backing, and rolled them firmly onto the large flat sections of metal inside each door. I used the back end of a screwdriver wrapped in a rag to press the edges down. I reinstalled the door cards. That was it. No tools more expensive than a utility knife. No specialized equipment, no software updates, no alignment. Just sheets of rubber pressed against metal. But what that rubber does is genuinely remarkable from a physics standpoint. And this is the part that should make you pay attention if you have ever wondered why luxury cars feel the way they feel. Sheet metal vibrates. Every time your tire rolls over a seam in the highway, every time wind pushes against the side of your car at speed, every time the engine revs under load, those vibrations travel through the body panels and turn the entire cabin into a giant speaker. The doors are the worst offenders because they are large, thin, and unsupported across most of their surface. They resonate like the head of a drum. A piece of butyl rubber bonded to that metal does not absorb sound the way a foam pillow absorbs sound. It changes the resonant frequency of the panel itself. It adds mass. It dampens the vibration before it ever has a chance to become noise inside the cabin. When you do this to all 4 doors of a Camry, the change is not subtle. The road noise that used to bleed in at highway speeds drops noticeably. The door slam shifts from a high-pitched bang to a low, dense thud. Music in the stereo gains bass clarity because the door speakers are no longer firing into a flexing tin can. Conversations at 70 miles per hour stop requiring raised voices. And because the cabin is quieter, your brain stops interpreting normal suspension impacts as harsh. The car feels smoother even though the shocks and springs have not changed at all. This is exactly what Lexus charges $20,000 to $30,000 extra for at the dealership level. Not entirely, of course. There are real differences in interior materials, in available options, in standard features, in the badge on the hood, and yes, in some suspension calibration. But the single largest perceptible difference, the one that hits you the moment you close the door and sit down, is acoustic. And it is the cheapest thing on the entire bill of materials. So why will no Toyota dealership ever quote this on a repair order? 3 reasons, and none of them are flattering. First, it is not a factory-authorized procedure. There is no parts number for aftermarket sound deadening in the Toyota system. A service writer cannot generate a labor code for it. The shop cannot warranty the work. From a corporate liability standpoint, it does not exist. Second, the margins are insulting. $42 in materials and 90 minutes of labor is a $60 ticket at most. No service department on earth is going to push that when they could be selling you a brake fluid flush or a fuel induction service for 3 times the profit. Third, and this is the one nobody likes to say out loud, the dealership network exists to sell you the Lexus. If you could spend $42 and walk away feeling like you already owned the upgrade, the entire pricing structure of the luxury division starts to look ridiculous. Which is exactly what it is. Now, before anyone runs out and buys a pack of Noico tomorrow morning, there are a few things you need to understand to do this correctly, because I have seen this job done badly, and it can be worse than not doing it at all. The first rule is surface preparation. The inner door skin has factory oils, dust, and sometimes adhesive residue from the original moisture barrier. If you slap sound deadener directly onto that surface, it will peel off within a year and rattle inside your door for the rest of the car's life. Wipe every square inch with isopropyl alcohol at 70% or higher and let it flash dry before applying anything. The second rule is coverage. You do not need to cover every millimeter of metal. In fact, doing so is a waste of money and makes the door significantly heavier than it needs to be. The goal is to dampen the large, flat, resonant surfaces, not to wrap the entire door in armor. Aim for 60 to 70% coverage on the inner skin, focusing on the largest open panels. Skip the structural beams. Skip the areas around the latch and window mechanism. Cut the sheets into manageable pieces of roughly 4 by 6 inches, because trying to wrestle a giant sheet into a tight door cavity is how people give up halfway through the second door. The third rule is the roller. Use one. A small wallpaper seam roller or a dedicated sound deadener roller costs another $5 or $6, and it is the single most important tool in the entire job. The butyl rubber needs to be physically pressed into every contour of the metal to bond properly. Just sticking it on with your hand will leave air pockets, and those pockets will eventually allow the sheet to lift, creak, and buzz. Roll every piece firmly until you see the aluminum top layer conform completely to the panel beneath it. The fourth rule is the moisture barrier. Modern car doors have a plastic or foil sheet between the inner door skin and the door card. This sheet is not decorative. It keeps water that runs down inside the door from soaking into your interior. When you remove the door card, you will tear or partially detach this sheet. You must reseal it properly when you reinstall everything. Butyl rope, the same material the factory uses, costs about $8 and is essential. Skipping this step will give you a wet carpet the first time it rains hard. If you follow those 4 rules, the job is genuinely something a careful owner can do in a Saturday afternoon with hand tools. If you do not feel confident pulling door cards, any independent shop that does audio installation work can do it for a labor charge that is still a fraction of what the perceived upgrade is worth. There is one last thing I want to leave you with, and it is the part that turns this from a cheap modification into a real piece of automotive knowledge. The reason this works on a Camry is not because the Camry is poorly built. It works because the Camry was deliberately built to leave room for the Lexus to exist above it. Every mainstream Toyota has acoustic headroom engineered into it on purpose. Engineers know exactly how much sound damping the car could have. They install just enough to meet the price point and the brand position. Above that price point, in the Lexus showroom, the same chassis gets the rest of the treatment. This is not a conspiracy. It is product segmentation, and every major automaker does it. Honda does it with Acura. Hyundai does it with Genesis. Volkswagen did it for decades with Audi. The difference is that with Toyota and Lexus, the platform sharing is so direct and so recent that you can close the gap yourself for less than the cost of a single tank of gas. The man who walked into my shop that rainy Tuesday morning did not trade in his Camry. He drove it home, called his wife from the driveway, and told her she had been right. He came back 2 weeks later and asked me to do the floor and the trunk for another $40 in materials, which I did, and the car got quieter still. The last time I saw him, he had passed 120,000 miles in a car he had once been ready to trade away. And he was still telling everyone he knew that he drove a Lexus he had built himself in a strip mall garage for less than $100 total. That is the part of the auto industry no one in marketing wants you to understand. The badge on the front of the car is the most expensive piece of metal on the entire vehicle, and a $42 pack of butyl rubber can replace most of what that badge was supposed to deliver. If this changed how you think about your own car, hit the like button so more Toyota and Lexus owners see it. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns that pull back the curtain on what dealerships actually charge for versus what you can do yourself in an afternoon. And drop a comment below telling me what your car is, because the next video is going to expose another platform sharing trick, this time hiding inside Honda and Acura, that costs even less and is even more effective. The luxury you have been paying for has never been as exclusive as they told you it was.